teaching you the art of industrial real estate. This is On Air with Team Jensen.
All right. Welcome to the second episode. Oh, this one's going on for a while. Welcome to the second episode of On Air with Team Jensen, the art of industrial real estate. Today, we're very excited for our first guest with Chris Gutierrez of KC Smartport. And Chris, thanks for coming on with us today.
My pleasure. Team Jensen asks. People show up.
Yeah, that's what we like to hear. But we might as well just jump right into it. Wanted to bring you on today and hear more about KC Smartport and let our listeners kind of learn more about your role in Kansas City and driving growth to Kansas City and bringing awesome opportunities to town. So wanted to kind of let you give your spiel about KC Smartport as well as KC which I know is part of the group that you work with over there.
Yeah, absolutely. So KC and Smartport are the regional economic development groups, 18 counties, 50 communities, both states. Our job collectively is to bring new investment into the region. KC is the umbrella group, and they focus on corporate headquarters, financial services, animal health, data centers, technology, and then have a whole group that does talent recruitment, because all of us that lease buildings and bring new deals, you got to have a workforce, so they're working on the talent side. Smartport specific is industrial, manufacturing, distribution, warehousing, and again, promote the region globally for new investment in. We don't help existing companies that are moving around. It's only that new to market activity, and been doing this. Smartport's been around since 2000. I've been there since 2003, so a long run of regional economic development, specifically industrial.
Yeah, so you guys have probably been pretty busy the last handful of years, I'd imagine.
Kansas City is on fire, has been for the last 10 years. I mean, you can pick the class of industrial. We were just talking about cold storage a minute ago, food processing, et cetera. And Kansas City has always been a transportation logistics hub, but I think the market has embraced that now. And developers like you guys and others have put their money on the street and built spec. It really raised our exposure out. So yeah, activity continues to do very, very well.
Yeah. Well, and what kind of moving back even further, what were you up to before you were with KC Smartport?
Yeah, out of college, I worked for the Missouri Department of Economic Development at the state level, doing similar work, trying to attract foreign investment in the state as well as helping Missouri companies to export. So great experience out of college, got to travel the world and work with some of the biggest companies in Missouri, helping them go internationally. But it gave me exposure to Kansas City and other markets and what's going on. My wife and I moved this way. Actually didn't stay in economic development, went to work for an advertising firm, helping them grow internationally. Then I worked for a manufacturer doing international. And then oddly, when I was at the state, I helped set up Smartport and had the opportunity to join that again. So always been doing economic development in this region. Grew up in Ohio, worked for the state of Ohio's economic development group as a college intern, got a little exposure to what this market was. And so yeah, been around it.
One thing I'd say about Chris and his team and Smartport is that they really put a shine on Kansas City and do a wonderful job of selling Kansas City and helping us sell Kansas City when the requirement is from out of town, looking around at multiple municipalities. And the other thing that Chris and his team have always been good at, that a lot of EDC groups haven't been good at and historically weren't good at, is a lot of our business in the brokerage world is about control and about confidentiality. And when you can't share facts with people like Chris, it makes it harder for Chris to do his job and Smartport to give us the information to our clients, get the information for our clients that they need. I just say Chris has always, and his team have always been very, very good at keeping confidentiality and also keeping their role in the process. Because again, you've got egos with brokers, but also it's important.
What? Ego?
Yeah, well, yeah, I know.
Not me.
Present company excluded, of course. But there are times where certain EDC groups, sometimes you feel like try to take the deal over, and it creates frustration and sometimes problems.
Friction there.
And I can say in the 20 plus years I've been working with Chris that we've never had that. We've never had that.
I appreciate that, Dan. And we've got a couple of sayings we say internally at the office that, our job is to be advocate of the deal, not the community in the region, not either state, it's the project itself. And before that, we stay with the person that brought us to the dance. So if it's your project, we work for you on the advocate role to the company. It stays locked down because it is a competitive market out there. And the first rule of economic development, you start talking about a deal, you lose because they go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Well, and what would you say, obviously the animal health and a lot of the manufacturing, we're seeing reshoring and a lot of things coming to town, the big EV battery announcement out in DeSoto. What do you see as the next, 3 to 5 years of growth in Kansas City? Would you say there's a sweet spot or a particular niche where we're really going to be showing the country what we're up to, or, is it really going to be pretty spread out evenly throughout those different niches?
I think it goes back to the legacy of this community. We're a transportation hub. We're used to be called Cowtown.
Yeah.
We had the second Ford automotive plant outside of Detroit. So we've always been an automotive sector. So you look at the trends we're having right now, food and beverage, EV industry, transportation, the distribution, e-commerce still continues. So our growth right now, probably 80% of the deals we're active with deals we're working on manufacturing, and 80% of those are foreign companies.
Yeah.
That see an opportunity to reshore, nearshore, ally shore, whatever you want to call it, into the U.S., into North America. So we're very active with European, Asian companies right now. And again, when you look within it, it's food and beverage, it's EV manufacturing, and not the EV manufacturers, the assemblers of vehicles. I don't think we'll ever get that because of the legacy auto industry that's here. But the supply, the parts, the batteries, the supply and parts to batteries, we're active in all of that. And again, it continues to grow. I think Kansas City, for a lot of reasons, is on a global stage right now.
Yeah.
So I'd say
Definitely.
3-5 years is going to be this, and continued. There's people talking that spec's going to drop below 50% of it where it was last year. I disagree with that. We needed to pick up in the last half to win my $100 bet I've got on the table. But I think we're going to continue to see activity in Kansas City. It's not going to slow down.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, the last year with rates doing what they've done, a lot of people seem to think that commercial real estate's slowing down, and you see the big headlines, on the news that these notes are coming due and there's going to be a lot of landlords hurting. I mean, from your standpoint, I know we've talked about it with Team Jensen, we don't really see that in the industrial sector of Kansas City, but have you noticed projects moving at a slower velocity and things of that nature, or kind of what impact have you seen that have on deal making?
Yeah, I mean, I think even in Kansas City, we're affected what's going on with the economic pressures in the financial market, but maybe not as bad or as hard as coastal cities. We've seen rent increases going up, which is good for you guys and good for the market. But we've seen it not go up as it has on the coast. So again, allowed us to continue to be competitive.
Yeah.
Wage rates are going up. So we're feeling the effects of that. We've had a few clients that have paused just to see if their capital outlay is now, or should they re-engineer an existing facility to gain a little bit more capacity. But I don't think it's ever been canceled or put on a long-term hold. It's just a little pause.
Yeah.
I think the only project I've had over the last 2 years that has stopped for a period of time is because there's so much demand for their product, because there's a shortage of it. They're enjoying the fact that there's a shortage of their product. So they're pushing the project out a little bit, a big manufacturing deal. We think it'll start going up again in fourth quarter. So I don't think it's affected us. I mean, I think you talked to the development community 3 years ago, you got your money, you built a building, and you had 20 potential buyers of the building. Now maybe you have 2, and you have to do 100 more steps to get them interested. So that's caused a little risk averse. Let's pause a little bit. But think about Kansas City and some of the national major developers around the country. They're headquartered here.
Yeah.
And a few of them don't have to worry too much about the debt market. They're
Right.
self-funded. That doesn't mean they're going crazy, but they're still playing in the market, which is a good thing for Kansas City.
Yeah.
Well, and the market's really changed from when we got started in it a long time ago. But, it used to be locally driven, locally controlled, very conservative. One group would put up a building, wait for it to get leased, and the other group would put up a building. North Point, in general, kind of threw that all out the window and started building buildings, multiple buildings in their own first project, and then all of a sudden you looked up and they had multiple projects around the city and the country, and
Yeah.
they've really, I think that, as well as Van Trust, That's been a real push that has, I think, put Kansas City on the map.
Yeah.
Logistically.
Well, and I would imagine one of the primary reasons Kansas City continues to get looks from out-of-town groups looking to, start an operation somewhere is just due to the cost to operate, cost of living, and all that stuff. Just again, not being as drastic as the coasts, and I mean that's got to be one of the primary drivers. Again, also proximity and location to the central U.S. But
Absolutely. If you look at our economic makeup, it mirrors the U.S., so there's not a huge industry that dominates. So we're stable and dependable here. We don't see those ups and downs. And then you look at the cost environment from personal housing and cost of living to building and business operations. And back to Dan's point, I gave him credit the other day that this spec boom that started in Kansas City started because Dan had the nerve and the gumption to put a spec building up, and the market started looking at what's going on in Kansas City, much bigger than the small market Kansas City used to put up. We'd get excited about 100,000.
Right.
You kind of blew
that's
that
what
away.
they were telling me last week. Yeah, those used to be the big ones.
Yeah, and people would get, like, what are they doing? They're putting up a 100,000 square foot building without a tenant. Now it's so much bigger.
Yeah.
And then you look at the market here, and you mentioned two big ones, and then you've got some smaller ones that are headquartered here that are national now. I think that work ethic, that conservative, that mentality of the Midwest and Kansas City is really taking these companies, and we joke at the office, there's this true thing called KC Nice. And I always pick on the competition, so the Southeast U.S. is nice, but they don't mean it. Here, there's a niceness, so when people start to work with you guys or North Point, there's a commitment that these guys are going to go out of their way to make sure I'm successful in the business I need and the building I need. And that relationship carries forward to the next deal and the third deal and the fourth deal. So
Right.
It's a good atmosphere.
Yeah, there's goodwill there.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, we go to a lot of the SIR conferences, and when I was first attending those, 7-8 years ago, no one really talked about our market. You'd see big, economic presentations and talking about the economy, and there would be all these data points, and rarely did you see a data point on Kansas City. And I would tell you the last really 3 years, especially, everyone knows about our market. Everyone knows the players in our market because we're all over the country now. And so it's awesome for Kansas City, the exposure we've seen. And we've been in other markets too where their EDC folks have talked about the team you guys have here in town. And so I know you guys are very well known too around the country.
Well, and again, I'm not trying to win brownie points with Chris, but and well thought of, and well thought of around the country.
Right. Well, that's what I meant.
The way that Smartport and KCADC present Kansas City and themselves is well respected throughout that industry.
A leading example.
Business.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And we look at it differently. Ellie Bowen and my colleague and I call ourselves industry people. We're going to go to an industrial real estate conference. We're going to go to an automotive conference. So we're industry people that just happen to be economic developers. That really resonates with people. And we were at an industrial real estate conference earlier this year. 450 people from all over the country. We were the only economic development group that was there. And that was an invitation. To your point, there was a credibility to what we do, and that we're not going to hear something and spread it around.
Right.
You've got to focus on that, and I think really understand the market and what drives clients versus, we have incentives and we have this. There's so much more to the deal that a lot of economic developers don't embrace, and I think you've got to look at the totality, the total picture of the deal to really gain that credibility. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, what do you see? Do you think in the long view, 10, 15 years, do you think we can look up and I know we compete with the Dallases and Chicagos, but do you, if you had a crystal ball, do you think we'll get to that size from a sheer product standpoint? I mean, I guess, what are some of the goals for KC Smartport as far as growing the community?
Yeah, and if you look where we are now, that's a great question. I mean, we're at over 300 million total square feet in the Kansas City market, one of 15 markets nationally. So we're already up there. I don't think in my lifetime, maybe you guys' lifetime on the other side of the table here, no offense, Dan, we'll get to 1 billion like Chicago and Dallas and some of those markets, but I don't think we want that. I think there's a continued growth that works for all of us.
Right.
But I think you're going to see this market really focus on the connectivity because we are a sprawling market. So transportation's key, infrastructure's key, There's a lot of things that we're already moving forward that other communities aren't when it comes to public transportation or getting workers to the job site. You know, economic development, I've been doing it for 30 years and I've never talked about daycare. But now it's a critical part of deals because people got to be able to address their personal lives, their family lives to get to work.
Oh, yeah.
And housing. I think you're going to see that continue to grow. We've got to stay ahead of this infrastructure curve and utilities. As I talked about, more manufacturing. Well, they have much bigger utility capacity needs. Other markets aren't addressing that I think like Kansas City is. And again, it's electric, it's gas, it's water and sewer.
Power.
Yeah, and we could all sit at this table saying we're not addressing it enough. But if you look at some other markets, I don't think it's raised up. And again, it's to you guys' credit and ours and others, we've raised it up to the local community at the highest levels because it's got to get addressed. Because these companies' decision-making time is so fast now. If they see one issue, one hiccup, they're going to the next site in another market that might be able to solve it.
Right.
And you don't get a chance to go, but
Don't get a chance to be reactive there. Yeah, you got to be proactive.
And also, I think part of Kansas City's growth and success has grown from and has come from the oversize of Chicago and Dallas, where some of those markets are getting so congested and so big that it makes Kansas City more appealing. It's a large small town, or it's a small big city. Call it what you will, but I think that we do benefit from that. I don't think there's many site selections going on where someone's looking for a facility in the Midwest where Kansas City isn't at least getting a look.
Right.
it's great to drive a client around, and they've got an aggressive schedule. They want to see all this property, and we hit every visit on time, and they're shocked that there was never congestion.
Right.
And again, the four of us at this table can complain about I-35 or I-70 at certain parts of the day, but there is no congestion like other markets.
Oh, yeah.
And it resonates with those people, and then they start to think, this is going to make my freight move more efficiently as well in this market.
Yep.
That's a selling point. I mean, you bring people to Kansas City, we call it the epitome of the visit. From a business standpoint, quality of life, I use the term big little town. You know, everything you would want in a big city is here, but it's also that small town atmosphere that they're going to genuinely work with you. And again, you're not dealing with the stresses of big markets on congestion and costs and crime. You never want to be a salesman and say it's easy to sell your product, but it's getting easier to sell Kansas City right now.
Well, and I've said before to you guys, when I was about your age, I mean, you know, I used to work with clients that, well, gosh, I got transferred out here to Kansas City, and you know, and they thought they'd been sent out to Siberia. You know, I mean, just because of Kansas City, they were afraid it was out in the middle of nowhere. And then you find once they get here and once they get adjusted and figure out what Kansas City's all about, then they won't ever leave. They
Right.
try and transfer them back out, and they leave the company.
Yeah. Yeah, Stewart and I have been working with someone that he moved to town from another smaller market in the region, and you know, he had been with the company that acquired a local company, and you know, he even did the Airbnb thing for a little while, looking around at where he wanted to stay, and he found the right neighborhood, and we were talking to him just a couple weeks ago, and he talked about how he loves Kansas City, and he's ready to live here for good, and how he, you know, saw the opportunity to move, and he jumped all over
Didn't think
it.
that would be the case at first. but
Yeah,
that's what he
yeah.
said.
So
You
I,
know, another segment of that is the veterans. We've got, 4 or 5 military bases in town, and
Right.
they get transferred to that base from all over the country. And when they're getting discharged, they want to stay here.
yeah,
And that quality of workforce that the veterans bring is another advantage to Kansas City. We've got, I think I saw 6,000, veterans are discharged a year out of this market, and a lot of them want to stay here. And again, ability to jump right into the workforce.
yeah.
Interesting. I hadn't really thought of that.
Well, and part of attracting talent too, I think the Chiefs have helped quite a bit. But figured, and I know I don't know what we can or can't talk about if there's any knowledge you have of it. But the KC site for the potential Royals downtown stadium. What's your opinion of all that? Are you excited about a downtown stadium? I'd imagine yes is the answer, but I'm just kind of curious. I've never talked with you about that before.
Absolutely. I mean, look at all the things in our market that benefit us to do more deals. New terminal at KCI, the front door is incredible.
Yep.
The infrastructure that's being built, the NFL draft that we just hosted. I mean,
Yeah.
we've been getting national attention. And the Chiefs, Royals, not this year, Sporting, getting better. We've had national titles across the board. The women's soccer team came in second last year. I mean, that sport focus here. So I think the Royals, it's time for them to move to a new location. I don't have any inside baseball of which of the two sites, but
Right.
you know, I either one. I mean, I'd favor the downtown one again. It's Chris talking here. I think that really brings the core a little bit better connected. Plus, they're talking about towers and housing and other things around that, and
Yeah.
Right.
quality of life of that. It's time, and think about what the Chiefs are going to do then with that space out there.
Yeah,
Oh,
they
I know.
have a lot of real estate to work with
Oh,
there.
it's going to
Yeah.
be amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then World Cup is
Yeah.
coming a
Right.
couple years from now, and you talk about Chiefs winning the Super Bowl. Talk is every match of a World Cup's about 10 times as big of a Super Bowl, and we're going to have 8 to 10 matches here in about a 6-week period.
Yeah.
Now, has that
Cool.
grown? I thought I heard where we were going to have more games because of, I don't follow it. but-
Yeah. Yes and no. World Cup itself, for the first time in 2026, there'll be more country teams than ever.
Okay.
So it's grown. First time they picked 16 cities in 3 countries, grown. And the first time they've allowed local host cities like Kansas City to really control a little bit of what's going to happen here. And there was always talk, Dan, that it'd be 4 to 6 matches, and none of it's been defined because the Women's World Cup starts in a couple weeks. After that, they'll start to really lay out plans. So I think we're going to get 8 to 10, and I'm pretty confident we're going to get later rounds. So again, much more global exposure. And the thing people don't realize, let's just take Germany. The German team will pick a city, and again, since there's multiple cities now, they're going to pick a city and they're going to stay there. And they'll travel to Vancouver for a match. They'll travel here, but then they'll come back. Their fans will do the same. So that a whole 6-week period, that economic impact, and we might get 2 or 3 country teams here.
Yeah, that'll be really
huge
cool.
impact. Yeah.
They turn out too.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
They turn out.
And the match, that match at Arrowhead Stadium is going to be, is incredible. The biggest party is the watch parties.
Right.
Because your
Down at
team might not be
P&L
playing.
and-
You just want to be in the environment.
I have no doubt that Kansas City is going to show out well for that, and
Oh,
that
yeah.
people will be treating all the visitors nicely, and just like
Yeah.
Kansas City people do. I mean,
Yeah.
you're going to welcome them with open arms.
It's
Yeah.
going to be great. And once we got picked, Global Financial Times ranked the 10 best cities for inward migration, for housing, livability, run your business, et cetera. 10 cities globally, only one was in the U.S., Kansas City, and they were ranked number 1.
Yeah, I
That's
remember
going to
seeing that.
continue to get exposure for us on a global stage.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's gonna be very cool to see what the city looks like by when the cup has come and gone. I mean, it's gonna be
By 2030,
yeah.
Kansas City is going to look.
in a good way. I think it's gonna be unrecognizable.
And I think the local committee that's putting that together, they obviously have to respond to FIFA, the organizing body for World Cup, and
Right.
they want these 10 things, 100 things. I think that committee is going to look at them for the long term.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need this for the World Cup, but look what we can do differently with that to extend to the market. So you're right, 2030, this town's going to be
Yeah.
unbelievable.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of good stuff going on. We're excited about it. And industrially, it's still, we still think our market is one of the better markets to be doing deals in. So we're excited about the growth there. And as far as globally, Kansas City, the animal health corridor stuff, I think are we a top market for that around the globe, I would imagine? I mean,
Yeah, if you look at the industry itself from a revenue standpoint, 65% of the global revenue of the animal health industry is in Kansas City.
wow.
Our heritage started there as the cow town. I like to joke that their customers are here. So you got chickens and beef and pigs, they're all here. And global companies, their North American headquarters are here. It's an industry that's seen a lot of mergers and acquisitions, and every time one happens, there's a focus on putting that facility in Kansas City. We host, the Animal Health Corridor team hosts a global conference every year, and 1,000+ people come from all over the world to Kansas City. And it is our event to promote Kansas City, but they think of it as their industry's biggest event. We give out this thing called an iron paw every year to the leader in the industry, and it's got our red KC logo ball on it. I mean, it's ours. And they'll stand up there and say, I'm so excited to get the industry's most prestigious award. There's a recognition that this is the animal health hub, center from the globe. It raises our caliber of recognition of business, to that industry that spreads to other industries.
Which has been under a lot of stress in the last 3 years with COVID and there's the inflation and all that kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
I mean, as everything, but I know that there were some tough times there with, the egg shortages and
Oh, yeah.
the pork and all that stuff too. So
I mean, that industry got hit really hard, but the industry that's here is cutting edge, leading to fix those solutions.
right.
And COVID, when we all went home, one of the biggest product sales that grew was pets and pet
Right.
supplies. Chewy.com picked Kansas City in 2020 during COVID and never did a meeting. Everything was virtually. If you drive by that Chewy plant now, 7 days a week, every holiday, 15 hours a day, they're open.
It's moving.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, how did it's been a while now, there's less pandemic talk and impact of that, but how, talking about our market the last handful of years, what would you say the biggest impact you saw on the industrial market in Kansas City was from COVID and the pandemic?
Everybody went online, so companies had to increase their capacity to deliver online shipments. UPS, I think, said their 5-year projection of online packages hit that number in 5 months during COVID. And you put Kansas City right in the center of North America, our ability to hit 85% of the U.S. population in 2 days, that was a focus for us.
Yeah.
In 2020, Chewy, substantial investment in Urban Outfitters, picked Kansas City.
Right.
2 gigantic facilities that picked this market because of that e-commerce growth. You hate to say that COVID had positives, but we had a record year in terms of investment in that market. That record year's continued. We had a little bit of slowdown in 2022 as companies started to think, did we do too much?
Right.
We've got too much product because we tried to up order during the global supply chain. Now we need to figure that out.
Right.
But 23, it is almost July 1st. The Smartport team has already hit their goals and actually asked our board, I'm going to get in trouble for this, to increase our goals early on because we saw it coming and we've blown those goals out. This market is done very well so far this year.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, it's been, the pandemic was a huge windfall for e-commerce, for growth and warehouse distribution. And I don't see it changing. But slowing down was necessary because the way it was going for a few years there was not sustainable.
Right.
Well, it forced the general consumer to consume that way.
Right.
That maybe we were still years away from, but now that it's slowed down, people are settling back into their ways of comfort and how they prefer to maybe transact on certain things. But there's still, now that it's opened people's eyes too. So while it might be slowing down, there's still totally prevalent.
Yeah.
Climbing.
And a couple of indirect things. We changed the way we eat and the type of food, and COVID really excelled that for obvious reasons. That's why we're seeing more food and beverage deals, because there's different diets, there's different restrictions, there's different control and security around food, so we're seeing those. Global supply chain has always been right on eggshells. I mean, it's just been a group of like companies, partners that have worked together, but delicately. COVID crashed them together. But because of that, that's why you're seeing all these foreign companies coming to the U.S. It's more efficient, costs better. Everything is good to come into the U.S. market as opposed to we'll just supply it from where we are. They've got to be here. And so manufacturing now is taking off.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the reshoring has been, I think that's what, because to your point, Dan and Stewart, like things have, I think in a healthy way, things have slowed back down to a less explosive and dynamic market where the velocity is moving in a healthy path and not putting, it was very over-levered for anyone who had product the last couple of years. But I do think that slowdown, I think what's going to change that moving forward is the reshoring. I'm getting mixed up with my words, but the reshoring, I think, is really what's going to give us legs and wind here moving forward the next couple of years. To your point, I think you said 80% of what you're working on right now is manufacturing, and I don't think we see that slowing down anytime soon. And the EV battery stuff, when we were at SIOR talking about that, they were just showing how they think it's we're not even scratching the surface of the demand that our market, that our country's going to see.
The underlying theme was it's going to get a little tough out there in commercial real estate unless you're in industrial. And in the industrial venue, if you are in or around the EV and EV battery type industries, that's going to be a good place to be.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was kind of interesting the way they pinpointed it.
Right.
You know, I've been learning over the last few months, you know, you look at the EV battery industry and all the raw materials and rare minerals that go into that and where those come from and, you know, issues around the world. Missouri and Kansas have been legacy battery regions back to the lead battery days. Still some of those mines. And we're learning a lot that when you mine lead, there was a number of byproduct materials that came out of it that really didn't have as much of a value that are now critical to the EV battery industry. So there's a group trying to bring that together to say, look, you not only can you locate here like Panasonic did, there is a supply chain here. And again, it's not ready to turn on tomorrow, but there's an opportunity for us to really be a magnet for that as well. And again, I don't understand the chemistry and everything around it, but it potentially is going to be huge for this region.
Yeah. Well, and the way I saw it after the SIR conference, we saw economists talking about it, and I mean, it's comparable to e-commerce in like the late 90s, early 2000s right now is kind of where I see it. You know, I think we're just scratching the surface, and I think there's going to be a 10, 20, 30-year run of EV, you know, battery driving needs. So we're excited about it. And
Point of clarification for the nerds out there, keep throwing around SIOR. SIOR stands for the Society of Industrial and Office Realtors. It's a national organization of about 4,000 people, international actually, and it's a network organization. We team with like-kind professionals around the world, and it really is an organization that you have to qualify to become part of. You have to have a number of years in the business, and you have to have a number of years of significant production in the business before you would be able to be admitted as a member. And so you know when you're working with an SIOR in a marketplace that you're dealing with someone who has some competence and some minimum capabilities.
Right.
So just because we've been throwing around SIOR, I just thought we'd
yeah. And Dan's been an SIOR for what, almost 20, 30 years? Something?
30 years, yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of good SIORs in our market here in Kansas City, which is a big reason why we have such a strong market and good relationships throughout the brokerage community. So it's a fun market to work in, and I can tell you from going to a lot of those conferences, there's a lot of other markets that are not as as community driven, a lot more cutthroat in a negative way, I would say. So we're lucky to be working in a level-headed playing field like Kansas City. So
And again, I think that's the Midwest
Definitely.
approach too.
Definitely.
It's, you know, I think we all think we can win together. We don't have to win at someone else's expense.
right.
Sometimes we're almost too nice.
Well, I don't know about that.
There's a guy in our office that calls all of this the coalition of the willing. I mean, we're all wanting to move things forward.
Right.
You don't have to, but it benefits you to do it. So.
Yeah.
Right. Well, thanks for coming on with us. I mean, I did want to kind of ask a little bit about just, you know, I know you're from Ohio.
Columbus?
Where did you go to college, Chris?
Are you a Buckeye?
I'm a Buckeye. I went to
Okay.
Ohio State. Grew up in Canton, Ohio, where the Pro Football Hall of Fame
Canton.
is.
Now, wait a minute. You didn't say
That's a-
the Ohio State.
I like to point out that people that didn't go to Ohio State call it the Ohio State. You know, we don't need to add that, but the football players love to say it in their introductions for sure to make a little emphasis. But yeah, I went to Ohio State.
Cool.
Who's your favorite Ohio State football player
Now or in the past?
ever? If you had to pick one guy.
You know, I don't know that I'd pick one guy. I grew up with two or three of them that were linebackers back in the day, you know, a long time ago. But they played against our football team in high school. But I'm not going to say I have a favorite. I mean, the Buckeyes put a great team out on every year.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got a chance at a national title basically every year. So
Yeah.
Just like Mizzou.
just like the Tigers.
The pontificators certainly think they do every year.
Hey, we're a basketball school now.
I've driven by that stadium once, and it is impressive from the outside.
The shoe.
I mean, it
Horseshoes
is
is something.
crazy big.
I
What
took
is
my
it?
youngest daughter on a tour. Boy, it's been 8 years ago. That she might think about that, and we're walking around, and she's like, "Dad, I thought you went to school here. How come you don't know where any of this is?" And I said, "It didn't look like this when I was here."
What is the image and likeness, IML?
NIL.
And
Name,
NIL.
image, and likeness. Yeah.
Do you think that is a benefit to Ohio State, or do you think that that's going to be a disadvantage?
I think it's an advantage. I mean, everybody, my wife gets mad. We can travel all over the world and you'll see an Ohio State shirt or a hat. I mean, that brand is out there.
Yep.
I talked to a guy locally, I'm not going to say his name, that likes that other team in the Big Ten that is up north. He went to the College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta the other day. And he asked the guy, the docent, whoever, how do we work this? And the guy goes, well, it's probably easiest to pick a team that you like Ohio State. And I said, hey, the first team at anybody's list is going to be Ohio State when it comes to football.
Yeah, it's certainly up there.
Yeah. When you guys played, I just remember growing up, you guys played K-State in a Cotton Bowl. I feel like K-State and Ohio State always have had a little bit of a rivalry because of that. But
Yeah. I mean, once you play somebody, you got that, you want to go back and get them again. And, my dad used to love, I went to Ohio State, never went to a football game the whole time I was there because we were always at our party that we used to have. Now I go back to 2 or 3 games a year, either at home or an away game. It's just a way for my roommates to get back together. But
For sure.
there was so much going on campus during game day. You didn't have to be in the stadium. But
yeah.
Yeah.
So you didn't generally attend the games?
Not when I was there. Yeah. None of my roommates did.
Yeah.
And it was just.
Well, what else? What do you like to do when you're not working?
I've got 3 daughters, and as 4 months ago now, we have 4 grandkids. So I have a 13-year-old grandson who is amazing, great basketball and football star, wants to get into esports now, so he's looking at that, but a great kid. 6-year-old granddaughter who's an angel, is in gymnastics. A 3-year-old grandson who can't lose his smile every time you see him, and it's amazing. You know how excited you are when your grandkids. And then we just had, my middle daughter just had a 4-month-old little boy who's also, again, wonderful little. So spent a lot of time with them. My wife and I have some land south of here that we built a cabin in Stockton Pond, and it's a great way to get out of the city and relax a little bit.
That's awesome.
Unfortunately, we got the Wi-Fi thing so that we could keep in touch with the kids, because it used to be that you could never reach us down there.
Right.
But so we do a lot of that, and we travel as much as we can when work allows it. So.
What's that, an hour, your cabin?
Hour 15 door
Hour
to door,
15.
and it's great. We'll go down there this weekend for the 4th.
Is it industrially zoned?
It's in the county, so it's not zoned at all.
I had to ask.
But it's completely off grid.
That's
Solar
awesome.
powered. We collect the rain off the roof.
Very cool.
There's a gray water system, so it's pretty amazing.
That's awesome. Did you guys do a lot of the work yourselves?
No, my wife kind of pencil sketch designed it
Okay.
of what she wanted, and we had a local architect who'd done some stuff in the green off-grid stuff, come up with some systems, but then we hired a local builder down in Clinton that had never done one of these, so it was kind of a fun project for everybody. It was right during the global supply chain issues with COVID, so it took a little longer than we wanted, but it's built now, and
That's awesome.
a lot of fun.
When
So,
did you meet your wife in college?
met her in Jefferson City, Missouri, when I started working for the state.
Okay.
So she's a Missouri gal, and
Where did she go to school?
she went to Lincoln University in Jefferson City, got her teacher's degree, and then she got her master's from UMKC here.
Okay, interesting.
Got any advice for a father of 2 daughters?
How old?
A 1-month-old and a 2.5-year-old.
Daughters are amazing. I mean, they're just fantastic. Everything about them is incredible, but get ready for the boyfriends and the stress, because you might be the best person in their world right now. That's going to change at a certain point.
So I hear.
It'll come back around. You know,
Yeah.
my daughters are fantastic now, but my dad used to say, there's always that advice, what do you do for the first boyfriend? My dad used to always say, look them in the eye and give them a handshake that they know they shook your hand.
Right.
And, don't hurt them, but let them know that you're right
that
there.
you're there. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good one. That's good.
You'll be fine.
Yeah.
Daughters are amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah, we've been calling him Girl Dad. He's got 2 now.
Yep, it's been fun. We're getting some sleep right now, but it's getting better.
Could
So.
get more.
good for you.
Well, thanks for coming on with us. We really appreciate it. And I mean, is there anything else, for folks wanting to learn more about KC Smartport, or if there's anyone that, has something they want to be talking to you guys about related to industrial needs, what's the best way to go about reaching out and connecting with your team?
Yeah. Well, the way we're set up, we're supported by our membership. Team Jensen's a member of that, so if you want to know about Smartport, talk to one of these 3 guys. They'll get you connected. But Our website is kcsmartport.com. It's a wealth of information about this local market, workforce incentives, real estate, what's going on, and our contact information's there. But again, back to the collective, the willing, all of us need to promote Kansas City together to drive deals. So a lot of ways to get connected in. And again, we will support whoever brings us in to make sure a deal gets done in Kansas City and not in Dallas.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Absolutely. They go out of their way to get the deal done and to make you look good doing it. And that's nice to have an ally like that. So
Absolutely.
Thank you.
thank you so much. And that ends number 2.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, guys. That was great.